All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott from Jeff Teaches Programming, and hopefully we're on the last video we're going to have before we try to convert this thing into an ASP.NET project. I've made several changes to several files, so I'd like to go through the whole program with you. I tried adding comments, probably didn't add enough, but just so you can see what's going on. So starting with our data, here's our DB context. I don't think I've changed anything in here, but I do want you to see again, it represents a database session and allows for the CRUD apps to happen. We did come in here and we had to make sure that we had an employee type in here. We're back down to having just one table that's going to handle everything. All right, now I'll show you that table in just a bit. But that's the discriminator, and if the employee type is hourly, of course, it'll have the hours worked and the hourly rate. If it's a piece worker, it'll have the pieces made and the price per piece. If it's a commission worker, it will have the commission percentage and the sales amount. And if it's a salaried worker, it'll have the salary. We reset the permissions or the precisions, I should say, in here to reflect basically what the maximum was going to be for any of these. So there's the hourly stuff. There's the piece worker. And the precision here, we only had to set it for price per piece. We didn't have to set it for pieces made because that was an integer. There's the commission. Whoops. There's the commission and there's the salary. Okay, that's it for that one. Payroll DB context. Did I have to change anything in here? No, but I do want you to realize I've got this payroll database 03b because I just kept making a bunch of changes and change the database all the time. But other than that, this is pretty standard. So that's everything under data. I'm not going to do this in the exact order it is here. The migrations, I only made an initial migration. I removed everything and just made one migration. Let's look at the models next. In fact, let's quickly go to app config. And the only thing I want to show you there is, again, we had to make sure the name we used here was the same one we used in our context factory file. Okay. I did want you to realize I used in here because I thought, why, I made this a long time ago. So this validation both, we've got this in here that can check for something being null or white space. In other words, if it exists or not. We've got a thing in here that tests whether or not it's an integer, whether or not it's a decimal, etc. All right. So I'm using these in the program that we're working with right now. Okay, I'm not going to go over those because I have in other programs. All right. Let's jump into. We'll go to the services, then we'll do the models, and then the forms. So for the services here, this was basically where we set up the services. This is what is going to handle the CRUD operations for us. All right, and again, we had to make sure that in here we had the name of the database and it was correct between those three files, the app config, the context factory, and this file. All right. Also, this appeared to be really important. I went and Googled it, and again, to make sure that the database existed. All right, so this was for hourly employees. Type hourly to list. This was piece worker employees. This was commission worker employees, and this was salaried employees. Then we had our CRUD actions. They're not in order. Actually, it's RCUD in here because the list was first. All right. So you'll notice in here what we're doing is we're listing either all of the hourly employees or all of the piece worker employees or all of the commission employees or all of the salaried employees. All right. This should never be hit. This was just a default. For the add, it's pretty darn simple. What had to change was the update. But the add, we used our context to add and then save the changes. The update changed significantly. So I want to go over this with you. Doggone it. So again, if the employees know we haven't chosen anybody yet, so we just threw an exception. I could have returned. We could have done anything. Then we want to get what we've been working on. So in other words, get the current record. How about this? Get the current record, not record from the database. All right, that's it there. Update the common properties. All right, first name and the last name. Then we had to do a switch, and we do switches all over the place in here based on the 4 employee types. So we're checking. This will update the first name and the last name. This will update the hours worked and the hourly rate. This will update the pieces made and the price per piece. This will update the sales amount and the commission percentage, and this will update the salary based on which of those we choose. All right. And then we save the changes. We never did an update in here. I don't know if that's going to matter or not. We'll find out in just a minute. All right. So there's our delete, where we remove and we save the changes. This is new. It made it a little simpler when we're working with the actual ID. This will get an employee by an ID. Okay. Let's go through the models. Yeah, I'll save it. What the heck. All right, for the models, let's just bring them all up one at a time. Here was the employee. Again, notice what I said, force each different employee type to create or calculate its own gross pay. By making that abstract, and since hourly employee and pieceworker employee and commission employee and salaried employee are all inheriting from this, they all need their own calculate gross pay. All right, we had to add this property also as well in here because we only have the one table now. So there is our employee. Let's just bring up all the other ones here. So there's hourly, there's piece worker, there's commission worker, and there's salaried worker. So hourly, again, some of the work was done in here. Did add some data annotations saying what the hours worked had to be between calculating the gross pay in here. There's nothing new in here. This is all stuff we've done before. For the pieceworker employee, same kind of thing, data annotations, and then pieces made times price per piece, then commission, data annotations, and calculate the gross pay as the percentage times the sales amount. The salary, there is no calculation. All right. So finally, let me quickly go over the forms. There really weren't many, if any, changes in the startup form, but this the employee manager form was just rewritten up the wazoo, so we'll go over all that in just a bit. All right, let's start with the new startup. Again, this looks the same. We've got our description here. This is our drop down with our different types. When we click show other form, it takes whatever value we put in there and it passes it to the other form. Allows us here to exit the program. And again, I'm looking for something that's new in here. Did do a little bit of rewrite on this. I found something online that had something similar to it. So we're creating, before I was just passing it directly, now I'm creating a variable within it. It was recommended that you do that. I wonder if I put a question mark here, if that'll go away. Not there. I think it'll have to go here. I didn't like that either, did it? I didn't think it was there. No. All right. We could put here. I didn't like that either. Okay. And then we pass that selected type in. Okay. All right, I just save that. So again, when we run it, this is what's going to come up. Let's look at the employee manager, because like I said, this was, I tried to write this and save some code, but I ended up adding a ton more code. And now when you look here, there are 750 lines, so it's about what it was before, but I think it's much better written than it was before. We have here our constants for hourly, our constants for piece worker, our constants for commission worker, and our constants for salary worker. Okay, then we've got this employee type, which is, as it says, our type of employee. This is allowing us to use the service. This is our binding source, which, as it says, is the bridge between our user interface, our form, and the data itself. All right, this provides access to, so this is the current employee, in other words. All right, constructors, we have two of them. The first one is going to end up being called by this one. And as it says, it initialized the components. It sets this up. I had some issues here with the read-only stuff. I don't even want to go through it with you. We'll see if it works when we get done. We create the service here, and we set a default. So if the employee type wasn't passed in, and again, it will be in this one. All right, in this one rather. But if it wasn't passed in, we just set it equal to nothing. Here, we do set it, and then we call. Okay, so this was the load event. This changed, it got smaller. We bound the data grid view. That'll be our binding source. This is new, set labels by type, because the labels were not showing. So the employee specific labels, those being for the hourly employee, the hours worked and the hourly rate. For the piece worker employee, pieces made and price per piece. For the commission employee, commission percentage and sales amount. And for the salaried employee, the salary. Those weren't showing, so we were basically setting them all up. Then we load our employees. I should have probably flipped these two, but loading employees got a little bigger as well, as you can see. If it was empty, we said you must choose an employee type, so you didn't choose anything. Otherwise, we switched on that, and we set our binding source either to get hourly, get piece worker, get commission employees, or get salaried employees. All right, that probably should have been employees, but it's okay. All right, as it says, and we set up the data grid view. We're going to go over all these in just a second. Select the first row if there is one, otherwise just clear the employee fields. So this is setting up the data grid view. What we did here was we prettied this up by, we had to give the name of each field we had in here, and then I changed these, so I've got employee ID, first name. We probably don't even need the word employee in there. We probably can just put in ID, their first name, their last name, but there's a space now in the header text. All right, same with hours worked, hourly rate, pieces made, price per piece, commission percentage with a percent sign, sales amount with a space, salaried with, there isn't anything. This I had to add because it wasn't in there, so I wasn't getting the gross pay. And I think I do want that. I've been trying to be consistent here, so I'm going to make that a small c. This is another thing that had to change, this clear employee fields. What I was doing in here, see, this right now is clearing out the text boxes. Let me do a file save all here. And this was clearing out these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 text boxes. I was also clearing out these two labels, but that was screwing things up. So I removed that. This is setting up the labels, as it says, either hours worked, hourly rate, pieces made, price per piece, commission amount, sales amount, or salary. All right, and notice for salary, we leave this other one blank because we're not using that. Now, this is new in here. I rewrote the selection changed. So this is when you do change something in the data grid view. Okay. So again, we got this Boolean field called isPopulating fields. If we haven't selected an employee, we just clear everything and return. if we're populating the fields, we're not doing anything yet, so we return. So here we're done. So what are we doing here? All right, we're saying, yeah, we're populating the fields. We're making sure that we set up the first name, the last name, and then the field based on the type of employee type we're working with. Finally, we recalculate the gross pay in here by calling it, but it calls it for the right type of employee. And either way, we just set this thing back to false again. Add record needed a bunch of rewrite because we added the validation both stuff into it. So as you can see, there's the validation both. Required, the is valid for first name, and if it's not in there, I'm trying to be consistent here. All right, and we did the same thing for last name. All right, then if either of these two text boxes were empty, we said you must put in the required fields. Then we did a switch based on type. Now, this may be funky. I may have to go back and change this because we're changing here, and we will have a blank for the salary. All right. So here we're switching. If it's hourly, again, notice what we're doing. We're checking to make sure that we put in a value between 0 and 84. If we don't, we show the message. Same thing with the rate. If we get down to here, everything works, so we make the new object and we break. We do a similar thing then for piece worker. We validate, but notice it's a validate integer input instead of decimal, that the piece is made is between 0 and 100, and the price per piece, that's actually wrong. That has to be between 1 cent and $1. If it all works, we set this all up and break. If it's a commission worker, similar type of thing. We validate that the percentage was a decimal between 0 and 30%, that the sales amount was a decimal between 0 and 100,000. If that all worked, if it doesn't work, if either one of those are wrong, we show a message and we return. I know I'm a little squirrely about all this stuff, but that's just the way I am. There's hourly. There's piece. Oops. There's piece worker. There's commission worker. And then there's salary. Let's do this. All right. And again, with all these, if there's any error, we return. Otherwise, we just continue on. Okay. Again, calculate the gross pay and display it on the form. I have that in a couple places. Probably only need it in one, but all right. Save the record if we didn't have anything, give an error. Otherwise, we just want to add it. Okay, then we want to reload because we want to show the update, the added record. And I think we put it on the last employee that we put in here. Update, this again was totally rewritten. The update record, again, we're doing some validation in here. First name, but the same stuff you saw previously, okay? I think I should ensure for these text boxes, I think I should use that if statement up above here. Here. Like that. Okay, because that'll account for the salaried worker. Let's go back down to here. Oops. So like I said, we're making basically the same types of checks in here. All right, now we're updating. Okay, reloading the data grid view. And delete is pretty simple. We do confirm. I again went back and rewrote this to make sure it works correctly. And then we delete based off of our service. This allows us to change from one form to the other. There's our simple exit routine. So it's about a little about 755 lines. Let's run it and see if it works. I tried it a little bit and it seemed to work okay. And if it doesn't, we're going to find out when I find out. All right, there's hourly. All right, so notice I now have all the labels and everything is in here as well. So let's come in here and let's we'll add John Smith. And John works 40 hours a week and makes $25 an hour. He's now been added. Now that's 3 here because I was playing with myself. That doesn't sound right, does it? I was playing with my own record, putting myself in there. So there's John Smith, 40, 25. Now when you go to change this, you shouldn't change it in here. You should change it up here. So let's say it was Jonathan. All right, we'll update. And notice it went to Jonathan. I don't like that. Let's make it John again. And update it. And it's back to John. Okay, let's add one more in here. So let's, I really should have cleared this, and I guess I didn't. So at the end of the, add record and update record, I should be calling the thing to clear the fields. I'll have to go back and do that. So let's just do it now, otherwise I'll forget to. Let's see. So after we call this add, we should clear employee fields. All right, and after we do the update, we should call clear employee fields. All right, so let's get rid of that. Let's do a file, save all. And now you'll notice the difference on here. That is, if I go back to hourly, I've got John Smith in there. If I want to change that to Jonathan, now when I click update record, it'll update it to Jonathan, but this should clear out. And of course it did not. It made the change, but it didn't update it. Well, let's see if we add another record if that happens. How about this? Mary Jones. Say she works 50 hours and she makes $20 an hour. So add her. There she is. And that's not clearing it either. That's very strange. All right, let's see if we can update this. Mary got married and she's now Mary Johnson. So we'll update, and she's now Mary Johnson. She quit, so we'll delete her. Do you want to delete Mary Johnson? Yes. All right, so that all worked, but this is not clearing. I'll have to look at that in just a minute. Show the other form. Let's go to Piece Worker, and we'll put in here Matt Brown made 45 pieces, and each piece is for 50 cents. Add him, and $22.50. That looks right. And it's actually Matthew, so we'll update. He's now Matthew. I think I can get rid of those things that say successfully updated and whatever. So I'll get rid of that. And let's add one more. We'll make this Gail Klein. She made 100 pieces and gets 9 cents a piece. So we will add her. Okay, and now she quit, so we'll delete her. That's working, but again, that sure isn't working right, so we have to make sure that clear is working, and it's not right now. Commission, we'll put in here Bob Kent. His percentage is 25%. His sales were $25,000 a quarter. That should be what, $6,250? That's all working. We want to change that to Robert. Update it. That's good. Let's say that he got a little bump up here. We'll make it 0.27. We'll update. Okay, that looks good. And let's add Ken Carter, 0.1, but he made $100,000 in sales. Add him. There he is. And we didn't want to add him, so we'll delete him. That worked. All right, so each one of those has worked so far. Finally, let's do a salaried worker. Let's put in here Wendy Williams. Her salary was 56789.00. Add her. There she is. She got divorced, so she's back to Wendy Brown. Update her record. Okay. We'll add Candace Clark. Say she made 100,000. Okay, that looks good. We want to delete her. That all looks like it works. Everything looks like it works. The only thing that's a little goofy still is when we do that, it's going back to what was in here. All right, so it isn't doing that. It isn't clearing the employee fields. All right, like I thought it would at least. But everything appears now to be working. The last thing I want to do here is show you quickly, hopefully quickly. If we go and look at our, let's refresh our databases here. And this is our database, payroll database 03b. Notice there's only the one field in it. So let's look in here first. Let's look at the designer. And you'll notice it's one field. And notice that all the employee specific fields allow nulls. Because if the person is an hourly employee, we want the sales amount, the commission, etc. to be null. All right. So there it is. All right. And if we look at the data that's in here, so let's view the data. There's who we have. And you'll notice that, for example, for Jonathan Smith, since he's hourly, it's null for sales amount and percentage, but here's these two. Now, it does look like there's a mistake in here. I'm not putting sale. I thought I put, good gravy. I think I'm going to have to go back in and add the gross pay for each type of employee because it's not being shown. All right, so I'll have to go back and do that. But this is pretty much in working order right now, and I've been going about a half an hour. I'm going to fix those, and starting in the next set of videos, I'm going to attempt to convert this into an ASP.NET application. I'll be back with that hopefully shortly.